The story begins right off the heels of the last game, with the destruction of Halo and the Covenant leaving with their tails between their legs. We're introduced to one Thel Vadimi, the commander behind all the major military operations against humanity up to this point, including the invasion of Reach. He explains what happened to the Prophets, the turtlenecks leading the Covenant, and because he failed to stop Green Man from destroying the ring, he's all but drawn and quartered, publicly humiliated and stripped of his rank for all to see, with the worst Yeti abominable snowman leading it. In stark comparison to Thel, Green Man returns to Earth to a hero's welcome aboard Cairo Station alongside Cigar Sergeant, who blithely refuses to explain how exactly he escaped the exploding Halo alive. E-Girl pretty explicitly said no one else made it, but I like Cigar Sergeant, so it's fine, stop asking questions. Yes, I am aware that it's explained in other places, but, you know. After a few minutes dithering around with sight and shield tests, Cigar Sergeant walks hand in hand with Green Man on a lovely gondola ride. He makes a point to talk about how impressive the orbital defenses of Earth are, guaranteeing that something is about to go completely sideways. The scene cuts between the reception Thel and Green Man receive, cutting a stark contrast between heroic accolades and absolute disgrace. We're introduced to Commander Hiveplay's daughter, Miranda, who keeps her composure, accepting a posthumous medal for her father, while Thel is further tortured and branded for his failure. Per Cigar Sergeant's insistence that the defense cluster won't let anything through in one piece, a Covenant fleet turns up to ruin the party, leading to Green Man fighting through the station, which I did armed with a Scarab laser, because I already did all this au naturel, so it's time to fuck around and find out how many times I can accidentally body myself with this thing. It's many. In an unfortunate turn of events, one of the stations explodes, then another, revealing that the Covenant are planting bombs. Green Man secures the bomb that's on Cairo and asks to leave the station, which Commander Perlman questions, and Green Man responds with a pithy,
"To give the Covenant back their bomb."
Permission granted.
This leads to an absolutely delightful cutscene where he yeets himself out of the station and does exactly what he said he would. It's over the top and ridiculous, but it's so badass that I couldn't really bring myself to care. Okay, I care a little bit, because I wonder how close everything is for him to reach the ship in a timely manner. Like, how fast was he drifting, and like, what was even going on? Kicking off the bomb, Green Man regroups with Cigar Sergeant and Keys Squared. The Covenant is looking for something on Earth and are so invested in it that one of the three prophets from the beginning is leading them, who is tragically called Regret. It's noted the force is much smaller than it should be, leading to a later revelation that they didn't expect Earth to be so populated, which really makes me question how they didn't find out about Earth prior to this point. Anyway, after fighting through worm boys, tanks, and a goddamn scarab, the gang regroup aboard the ship in amber clad to pursue Regret through a slipspace portal, just in time to avoid being destroyed by the explosion it releases. Cairo is not so lucky, but I do find it very neat to see what actually happens when these ships make a jump when they're not in space. Meanwhile, Thel is brought to a secret meeting with the Prophets Truth and Mercy, where they manipulate his shame and guilt to have him accept the suicidal position of Arbiter and send him to hunt down a heretic who doesn't believe in the Covenant's dogmatic religion. It's revealed through this game's terminal entries that the position of Arbiter was once the pinnacle of elite culture and society, before the Prophets turned them into a mark of shame for the disgraced, twisting the knife they've buried deep in the elite psyche. On the way to assassinate this heretic, Thel is briefly confronted by Commander Barry White, who remarks that he cares about the lives of his soldiers but not Thel, to which Thel responds,
That makes two of us.
Which just makes me feel even worse for him. He was a decorated and respected war hero of his people. In another life, the rank of Arbiter would have meant he achieved the highest honor his people could bestow, and I just... Fighting his way through the facility, Thel is briefly sidetracked by an aerial section with this music, which is a choice.
Get after their leader, but watch your back. I'm sending one of our bandits to support you.
Further into the station, you pass a green vat containing— oh god f***ing damn it! So there's Flood here. Perfect. Fantastic. Great. Love that for us. Anyway, after a brief bit of holographic edging, the heretic locks himself into a storm shield, prompting Thel to sever the cable, keeping the station stable in the gas giant's atmosphere. As the station freefalls, he finally corners the heretic, only to be briefly distracted by— oh for f***'s sake, not you again! Nonetheless, Heretic plants seeds of doubt in Thel's mind, though he does the stupid thing and attacks him just as he's paying attention to what Worst Robot has to say instead of I don't know, just like letting them talk? Killing the heretic, Thel is briefly in danger of actually gaining a better understanding of just how thoroughly the Covenant lied before Abominable snatches worst robot, silencing him. I'm sure there's nothing for Thel to worry about. Returning to Green Man and friends, it turns out Regret jumped to another Halo he plans to activate. After another cool cutscene, Green Man fights through snipers, tanks, more wormy boys, and roughly 5,000 Halo sword wielders to reach the temple Regret is hanging out in. As a side note, it's pretty neat that the language the Prophet speaks sounds like the singing you'd hear from a monastery when it isn't being actively translated.
Wait, go back. That's what I thought he said. The Prophet of Regret is planning to activate Halo.
Are you sure?
I shall light this holy ring, release its cleansing flame, and burn a path into the divine beyond!
Pretty much.
The next section was designed by someone who despises thalassophobics, because why else would you make me sit in a glass box that goes underwater twice? Hate, 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 hate. Just as Green Man is about to reach Regret, the rest of the Covenant fleet turns up to put a severe time limit on an already urgent mission. Fighting into the temple, Green Man hijacks Regret's rocket share and punches the old turtle to death in a sequence that probably wasn't intended to be funny, but... The fleet is not amused by this, however, and they immediately laser drill the area, forcing Green Man to yeet himself into the water to avoid getting his ass burned off in another pretty cutscene. He seems to fall unconscious as he sinks, which is really unfortunate because a creepy danger noodle wraps around him to pull him deeper, telling him,
This is not your grave. But you are welcome in it.
"Thanks, I hate it." Meanwhile, the Prophets make the absurd decision to throw the Elites under the bus because of Regret's death, replacing them with the Space Yetis for protection, despite the fact that the Elites were the first to serve in the founding of the Covenant. I'm sure this won't backfire at all. Brushing aside this ticking time bomb, the Prophets send Thel to retrieve the Index so they can activate the ring, a mission he takes on with the same grim acceptance as the last. Throughout the mission, it's clear Abominable has very little interest in actually helping if it means getting out of his comfortable ship. Fighting his way through the facility, it doesn't take long for Thel to encounter more goddamn flood because apparently all these cursed rings had spore samples on them and there's no escape. Midway through, Thel meets up with Commander Barry White and other friendlies holding off the flood until reinforcements arrive. Thel explains what he's doing there, and Barry inspires his troops to help Thel on his mission, accompanying him on the ground. It turns out Cigar Sergeant and Keys Squared have made their way into the facility too, also pursuing the Index. Making their way deeper into the facility, Thel and Barry reach a gondola which will bring them to the Index. At the shriek of incoming flood, Barry ignites his sword and pledges to keep them busy. Abominable then has the audacity to swoop in with...
I see that tower didn't join you.
Hatred. Surviving a horde of sword-wielding flood, a nightmare on any difficulty, let alone what legendary players must have experienced, Thel finally reaches the Index only to have to fight Green Man's friends for it. He manages to best both of them, only for Abominable to snatch Keys Squared at the last possible moment, taking the Index, the humans, and revealing that the Elites are to be slaughtered. Thel is horrified and enraged, believing this is a ploy by the brutes, only to be told that the Prophets ordered it, leaving him too shocked to avoid being blasted into the void. We finally come back to Green Man, who is decidedly not into tentacle play, and we're introduced to a talking churro someone fished out of the sewer. The Grave Mind informs them that there's still time to stop the key from turning, and teleports both of them to different locations, sending Green Man to the studio the Prophets are recording their hot new single in. Green Man chases the Prophets through their own damn city, and oh, would you look at that, the Elites are in mass rebellion against the Covenant. Who could have seen that coming? As Green Man gets ever closer, In Amber Clad appears inside the city and sprays flood everywhere, making a bad situation absolutely abysmal. This leads to the Prophet of Mercy's death, which could have been easily prevented if not for Truth showing his hand and ordering Mercy to be left to his fate. Even Green Man's intervention doesn't save him, but he does give away where Truth intends to go, leading to another frantic fight through increasingly flood-filled hallways. E-Girl insists on staying behind to explode In Amberclad's engine if need be, which is the worst idea because she's the best and deserves better than being left behind, but we'll get to that in Halo 3, won't we? Truth makes it onto an ancient Forerunner ship at the center of the Holy City and takes off, but it isn't fast enough to avoid Green Man sliding inside. He almost promises to come back for E-Girl, only for her to cut him off with,
Don't make a girl a promise if you know you can't keep it.
Thel, meanwhile, is sent to group up with the rest of the elites on the Halo. He eventually finds and teams up with both Commander Barry and Cigar Sergeant to stop Abominable from using the Index. With the help of tanks, worm boys, and a goddamn scarab, the motley crew make it in time to stall Abominable. They try to make him see reason, getting Worst Robot to explain what the Halos actually are and what they'll actually do, but Abominable refuses to see physical destruction as a bad thing because why would he? This whole thing is framed as a spiritual journey, ascendance, the crude matter of the body is of little consequence if spiritual salvation is at hand. Activating the ring, Abominable treats us to a boss fight where you have to wait for a third party to shoot him 3 times to disable his shield before you can actually hurt him, which is certainly a choice. With his death, Keys Squared manages to deactivate the ring just in time to avoid disaster. The gang is promptly informed by Worst Robot that because of this aborted firing, the entire network of Halos is now ready for remote activation, to be done from a location called the Ark. Thel asks where the Ark is, and we cut back to Green Man aboard Truth's Forerunner ship arriving at Earth. It's almost shot down, only for him to inform Commander Perlman that he's aboard, and answers the follow-up question of why with,
"Sir, finishing this fight."
Which neatly prepares you for the final mission where... Wait, hang on. What do you mean that was the final mission? So yes, after that final mission, the very last thing we see is Cortana alone with the Gravemind, telling it to go ahead and ask its questions, leaving us to wonder what exactly is going to happen to her and how Green Man is going to deal with the Covenant's horse going forward. It'll be fine. Cortana's fine. She's fine. It's fine. This is fine.